Hello, this is Dr. Rick Hofer. There's been numerous requests for a video over the Chapter 10 material, so this is what I've put together for you. I hope you find it helpful. What I'm looking at first is the example that's in the book about the New River Community Council newsletter. And this is a good illustration. It's simple, but it's still pretty good. So let's go over it kind of in detail. The first thing you need to do is to figure out these things. You need to figure what are the fixed costs, what are the variable costs, and what's the break-even point. So, according to the material, the fixed cost is the newsletter coordinator salary, $5,000 a year. Now we call that fixed because we're going to pay that person regardless of how many newsletters get subscribed to. But the key question here is going to be how many subscriptions do we need to sell in order to break even? And that's why we call this a break-even analysis. So fixed cost $5,000. That's just what the information is that we're given. So what's the variable cost? The variable cost is the cost per subscriber to produce the newsletter. So what we're told is that it will cost $4 to produce each individual newsletter. So this is an old book, so they're talking about paper, they're talking about ink, they're talking about postage, right? But even if this were electronic, which it would be nowadays, you would still have some cost to produce. Right? It would be less, right? That's what's cool about electronic and digital things is that you make it once, you put it into a PDF, and then it's very cheap to distribute. There's basically no variable cost to it. But in this case, we have a cost of variable of $4. Now, why is this called variable? Because really, you look at it and you say, well, what's variable about that? It's $4. What's variable, and this is really key, a lot of people don't get this right, so please pay attention to this point. It's variable because it depends on the number of subscribers what the total amount of cost is. So the fixed cost is $5,000 because we're paying the guy or the woman $5,000 regardless. But if we sell one subscription, it's going to cost $4 to fill that subscription, right? Now, if we produce two, how many is that? It's going to, if we have 2 subscribers, it's going to cost $8. And if we have 3 subscribers, it's going to be $12. We're talking about in total, right? So the total cost, the total variable cost for 3 subscriptions is $12, even though each individual has a fixed price of $4. Okay, I understand that can be confusing, but we're talking about the total cost being variable. The total cost of the fixed cost is $5,000. One person, one intern doing all the production. But the total variable costs vary depending on the number of subscribers. All right, so that's really a very important thing about defining what a variable cost is and how you calculate it. Okay, again, the variable cost is fixed per individual, but when you add all those together, then it becomes variable. Because you might have 100 subscribers, or you might have 1,000 subscribers. And so that cost of the production is going to vary. Okay. Now, so moving on. No overhead costs, which is a little unrealistic, but whatever. That could have been included in the variable cost calculation. So the estimated cost to consumer to subscribe. All right. In the first part, they say, all right, well, how much should we charge for this? Right? Because that's the key business decision here. All right. If we create a newsletter, we don't want to lose money on it. We want it to be useful. So how many subscriptions can we actually sell? So they kind of sit around and they think, well, all right, let's charge $12 for it. What happens if we charge $12? How many subscribers do we need to have to break even? So this is the key question. How many subscribers does the New River Community Council need to have to break even on this venture? And then this is where it gets into the calculation. Now, I don't think the calculations are actually very difficult. I think the wording is what's confusing to people, because it's business language. It's profit, it's net profit, it's marginal cost, things like that. These are not words that you necessarily have encountered very often. So, but that's, as the director of a nonprofit, you may have to become entrepreneurial in the sense of, well, what kind of services should we provide? How much can we charge for them, right? That's business talk. All right, so the basic formula is right here. P of X equals A plus B of X. So to translate that, the price of the service, of the subscription, which is X, equals the fixed cost plus the variable cost times the number of subscriptions. All right, that's why it's really important to lay out what the P is, what the A and the B are. Okay, so what we've got here is, how do you translate that into the numbers that we have? So it's here, 12 of X. See, we're trying to find X. X is the number of subscriptions. $12 for each subscriber equals $5,000, that's our fixed cost, plus $4 per subscriber. Now let's just go over that again. It's going to cost $12. That's what we're going to get in. $12 is the subscription price for so that side of the equation. The left side is the total of that is $12 times the number of subscribers. And to break even, that equals $5,000, which is the fixed cost, plus $4 times the number of subscribers. All right, and so we work that out, going around. $12 times X equals $5,000 plus $4 times X. Right? Now you can see those are each in their separate boxes, so that you can do some formula later on. But here we're taking 4X from each side. 12X minus 4X equals $5,000. All right. Then it becomes simple. 8X equals $5,000. X therefore equals $5,000 divided by 8, or X equals $625, which you can see up here in the formula box is $5,000 divided by 8. Okay, so we have to make 625, that's X. That really shouldn't be, oops, shoot. That really shouldn't be a dollar sign there, sorry. X equals 625. That means we need to have 625 subscribers to cover our costs. All right. Now, that's just the math of it, all right? And so then you have to look at that and say, hey, can we actually sell 625 subscriptions in this community of River City? And the director says, well, you don't really think so. It doesn't really think that that's a feasible solution. That's, in other words, it's out of the realm of possibility. So that's not going to be the final answer, that $12 is the price. So you can use different figures for the subscription price. And the book tries $15 and $20. If you go to table 10.2 at the end of the PDF chapter, it's all laid out there. Okay. Then, once the break-even point is reached, all the fixed costs are covered, which means that each additional subscription brings in a profit. All right, that's called the marginal cost there, the marginal pricing. But how much profit? If the subscriber pays $15, which is what they settle on, okay, the subscriber pays $15. So you would think, okay, good, we get another subscriber, we get a profit of $15. But that's not right, because there's still the cost of $4 to produce each newsletter, right? That's the variable cost per subscription. So the profit for each additional subscription is $15 minus $4, or $11. So if you got the 625 subscribers, you're just even, all right? It's well, in the first example, in the at the $15 level, you need fewer subscribers. Look it up in the book, exactly how many that is. All right. Anyway, so that's how you do it, and it's not hard mathematically. It's simply a little difficult because you have to know what you're solving for. In this case, you can solve for anything, right? If you but we were solving for X, which was the number of subscribers. Suppose you already knew the number of units that you were going to produce, then you could solve for the price. So how much should we charge? We have 1,000 bed nights that we could do, or we have 100 slots in our benefit dinner. How much should we charge in order to make the amount of profit that we want? Okay, so now let's just take a quick look at exercise 10.3, because that's the one that you have to do. So the question here for what you have to do is, what is the staffing level? How should you staff this new program, the visiting nurse? Okay, how many and what type? Should it be full-time or part-time? Okay. Now, in order to do this, you have to run 4 separate break-even analyses, and these are laid out. So before you can do that, you have to figure out what the fixed costs are and what goes into the variable costs. Then, in what you turn in, you talk about what the numbers mean. Right? So you're going to have different break-even points based on the fixed costs and the variable costs. And so you have to figure out, why are they different? So you explain that. Then decide if some of the break-even points are not feasible. That is, they can't actually be done for some reason. Then make a decision as to how to staff the program and explain why, using the material in the course to justify your answer. Okay, so the point of all these things that we've been doing, these exercises, are not just to learn Excel, because in and of itself, Excel is not that fascinating, right? But you use the numbers to make a decision. And so in this case, the decision that you have to make is, what are the staffing levels? What kind of staff members? Okay? Not all opinions are correct. So be sure that when you give your answer, you're basing it on facts and figures. All right? So that's all that I've got on this. I hope this is helpful. It's gone on a little bit longer than I thought it would, but now at least you have an idea what I'm looking for and one way to go about doing it. If you still have questions, feel free to post them in the discussion area. That's not a problem. In fact, I encourage that greatly. All right. Thanks very much, and hope things are going well.